regularly scheduled. Sorry about that. It is now 6 o'clock, and we'll call to order this Brunswick City Commission regular scheduled commission meeting for Wednesday, September 18th, 2024. If we can all stand for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Can we bow? Father God, thank you for the time to come together, to put our work and our wisdom together to do all that we can for the citizens, but continue to watch over us, continue to cover us with your love, grace, and mercy. In your son, Jesus, do pray. Amen.
The flag, United States of America, public, and nation, God, indivisible, liberty.
We'll now move on to the approval and the adoption of the September 18th, 2024 regular scheduled meeting agenda. Do you have any addendums or subtractions?
Mr. Mayor, I have a couple of changes to the agenda.
Yes, sir.
First, I'd like to defer item number 3 under public hearing to our October 2nd commission meeting. The representation for the applicant was not able to be present here tonight.
Wonderful. Hearing the first, do I hear a second?
Second.
Hearing the first and the second, all those in favor show by the usual sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same. Hearing none, the motion passes and item 3 is deferred.
Mr. Mayor, I also have, would ask that we defer, actually first, Madam Clerk, is there any representation here from Georgia Port Authority today in the audience? Okay. All right, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a recommendation that we, for item number 8 under city attorney's items, consider approval of an easement with Georgia Port Authority. I'd like to request that we have, their representation here so we can ask some questions in regards to this easement before we hear this matter.
Hearing the first, do I hear a second?
Second.
Hearing the first and the second, all those in favor show by the sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Hearing
Is it
none,
being-
item
Is it being deferred to a date specific?
I would say that probably would be reliant on when GPA or Georgia Ports Authority would be available to represent themselves.
I'll relate.
Okay.
Thank you. That item 8 is deferred. We'll now move on to appointment for board. Oh, the full agenda. I apologize. With that, we'll now make a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Do I hear more?
I move that we approve the agenda as
Amended.
amended.
Mhm.
I'm sorry.
Hearing the first, do I hear a second?
Second.
Hearing the first and the second, all those in favor show by the usual sign of aye. All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes and the agenda is adopted. We will now move on to number 2, which is board appointment for the tree board. We have one appointment for the expired term of Miss Kitts, and for the name appointed for consideration is Miss Ann Hurley. Is she in?
Yep.
Miss Hurley, could you please come to the front for us? Thank you so much for putting your name in, and just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in the tree board.
Sure. I'm Suzanne Hurley, and we've had a house here 2011. And I'm just interested in contributing to the city, and I'm retired. And I got my Master Gardener certificate this past May, so that's my one qualification. And other than that, I just would like to contribute. I'm passionate about the trees and the tree canopy here, and I've been attending some of the tree canopy meetings, the workshops. Any questions?
Any questions from the commission? Thank you for your interest and thank you for your already in our community. With that, I'll open it up for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I approve to appoint Mrs. I apologize, Van Hurley to the Tree Board Commission.
Hearing the first, do I hear a second?
Second.
Hearing the first, second, all those in favor show by the usual sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. We will now move on to updates from the permitting process. I will turn this over to City Manager McDuffie.
Good evening. Okay, so, the permitting process has been started. It is much complicated than we envisioned. We realized that the last update was in 2013, and of course, some of the conditions and concerns have changed since then. Of course, we have a different commission, we have a different administration, we have some significant investments in our parks that have been made. Also, events that are changing and community impacts and concerns that we need to consider. So we are, willing to look at all of those things. And I don't know, hold on. Let me get IT to. Andrea, can you put yours up versus mine? Thank you. Okay, so the current activities that we have right now, we convened a multi-department review group so that we can review some of the information. You can move to the next slide. Next slide. There you go. Looking at the reservations and buildings, facilities, attractions, parks, squares, all of those things. We talked about street closures and what those impacts are. We talked about, what type of events we have and, how we need to accommodate the difference. We are developing a database of event permits, looking at the facilities and trying to inventory them, looking at our parks and trying to inventory the amenities in the park so we'll know exactly what each offers for people who are coming in and wanting to use the facilities. Also developing a base map for all the parks and squares that may be used, and looking at combining the, permitting process and seeing if it's better to have one for all facilities. Mary Ross Park and Howard Coffin are somewhat different, so maybe have ones that we modify for those particular facilities. Our next step is to review applications or permitting forms from other municipalities, kind of identify, what the needs are in terms of review forms, looking at fee schedules and cost, and also, we need to revise what's put on the web page and what marketing will be. And there are some revisions that may be required to ordinances that deal with our parks. Next steps are the things that we needed to confirm some direction on was basically what would be encouraged uses of the parks and facilities, what would be the maximum investment, or how to maximize the city's investments in recreational opportunities, and what the impacts are for the areas. There are some parks such as Orange Park, Palmetto, that are residential areas. So encouraging use of those parks is kind of different, encouraging use of Mary Ross Park or Liberty Ship Park. So those are conditions that we'll have to look at. Timeframes, when a park can be used for activities, all of that has to be taken into account. Looking at what are compatible uses for some of the parks, which may, some may be for uses versus others. Looking at the public safety and fee structure, whether we're going to try and cover some of the cost of use, cost of labor, cost of equipment, use of facilities, and or right now our fee is very nominal and it basically doesn't cover much of anything. It does cover the application. I guess doesn't even cover that process necessarily, but I think if you all have some input on those things as far as what we should be looking at in terms of fees and that kind of thing, be helpful. And also looking at how we can have use of the park without, having any, I guess, provision of service for the city. So those are some of the things that we've been looking at. It's, like I said, it became a much more complex issue once we started looking at it, but I think it's something that definitely needs to be overhauled, and we're taking, a very comprehensive approach. So
Can I
that's my update.
Can I ask one quick question? What, is there any bifurcation between, in the fee structure between someone who's in the city of Brunswick versus someone who doesn't?
Right now,
No. Okay.
yeah, so that's another consideration
Okay.
as well.
Open questions from the commission.
Ms. McDuffie, have you all, I know you emphasized now in your presentation about the parks and utilized facilities, but what about how much emphasis have y'all thought about the block parties or the block usage?
Well, again, that's one of the things that we're looking at, because that's been, one of the concerns. We're looking at possible, offering, because right now we have a permit for a event that's being held by a church, that's on a street, right in the neighborhood. It's a daytime event. And those considerations are things that we need to think about, because I don't, we don't want to necessarily, these are neighborhood engagements. There are things that we, support and encourage. I think the question comes in when public safety is another concern. So we are still looking at, and again, closing street closures, you look at the actual traffic for that street. There are a lot of small streets, and luckily around here you can detour, relatively easily around a block in a street. So it doesn't cause a lot of traffic congestion when that's done. It is still a consideration, and we certainly want to encourage neighborhood engagement and that kind of thing. So, but I think the thing that we're looking at is making it more of a daytime event process. And if it's not, then it needs to be in another location.
Do you know, or do you have a timeline when this permit application process will be completed, or?
We're getting into we're working on it right now. I can say that we probably will have a draft within maybe a month from now,
Okay.
and then bring it back at that point, at least a draft or some determinations of what we think in recommendations going forward.
And the fee schedule, yes, you mentioned about looking at other municipalities' fees, and I think getting what they charge and maybe becoming a happy medium for us. And just like I just mentioned about, where we want to, hey, give incentive, or hey, our
Right,
citizens
people who
here,
live- yeah.
residents,
I
you
think
get a
that's
discount
very
versus
appropriate.
outside. So anyway, I'll look forward to that draft.
Okay,
And going forward from there. Thank you so much for that report.
thank you.
One last, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go I just want to make sure that the public's aware too what we're talking about. I appreciate that report, but I
Right.
know on the agenda it says permitting process. And I want to make sure that everybody's clear that this doesn't include like building permits and things like that.
Right.
That we're specifically talking about
Right.
event permits and special events. So
Exactly.
thank you again for all your hard work on that. I did want to know if the team that you put together to do some of the brainstorming and reviewing of the current process, has there been any thought rolling in like this space here, old City Hall, and the event space, at Mayor Ross Park, into one
Well,
process, or is
we
that?
we are looking at it. It's sort of a different animal in certain regards. I guess I go back from my experience of running multiple things and I basically had a simple lease for, use of any facility, but those were buildings.
Gotcha.
So they had, similarities that you can engage in a single lease process. These have such differences, and it may be such that, our planning process right now is for public spaces, not internal space necessarily. Because we did talk about Howard Coffin Park and the fact that the recreation has a separate facility agreement or lease agreement. So when we talk about buildings and internal, we may collectively look at those, but probably separate from the outdoor park and public space.
Yeah, I would just ask as you guys continue to do your due diligence, that agree that the probably lease agreements will need to be different versus like the gym or coffin versus here and let's say the Mayor Ross Park uh
Well-
farmers market. But I guess where I'm going at is I'm fine with that, but I would like us to explore if we could send the public to one base and they choose, okay, I want this venue, and they get the right form they need, instead of having to figure out where do I go if I want to go to Howard Coffin. Oh, I got to go talk to D-Day, I got to go Parks and Recs, or I go to City Hall. It would be nice if we at least had the top of the funnel more streamlined. So you go there and then it could go to the right. If that
Yeah, I think that's a
Okay.
good point of.
Like, for example, when it comes to the county, if you want Selden, you go typically to Selden. And then any other building in the county, you go to the ballot building, and they have for all of it. But what I would like to see is if we can have a digital version, so people aren't having to ride around. The form can be online, and just like our event permitting now, the paper. you
Yeah,
have
we
to
would
print
like
all
to have
this.
it digitally, where it can be filled out.
Right.
Because it is kind of antiquated, people writing,
Yeah.
that kind of
And for
stuff.
so many years, and I get it, like people have used certain parts of the city, their block parties, and I get it. It's areas where they grew up in community, but to push people to utilize our parks, like that one group that we pushed to Liberty, well, not Liberty Ship, but Coach Williams Way, because it's away from homes. It's, it's not near residential, Mary Ross, like those locations instead of,
Yeah, I think, it is going to be limited and very restricted in terms of, because the street closure and because of the impacts on the neighbor or
Right.
residential areas. So those will have to be something that we know, I haven't determined what that uniqueness may be.
Right.
But I don't want to totally, say we can't do it.
right.
But do have some parameters, will set it where it doesn't lends itself to have those concerns
I
of
think
virtual impact.
one thing I would suggest is, I guess whoever is applying for the permit should be someone that lives on that street.
Or in that, right in that
Right.
area, or, like the church, if the church is there, something like
Right.
that. And certainly, I think the biggest thing for me is the time, and it be something, up until 4 in the afternoon,
Right.
something like that.
And plus, like you said, the church is doing a community out, and it's during the day, and they outline, they provided detailed information what they're doing, unlike when somebody just put social.
Right, and,
difference.
yeah, you're right, very much. Thank you.
Quick question. is there
Regina,
any-
this is, oh, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
In this process and in accordance with, something that Commissioner, Saby said, I think you could simplify it by categorizing, the facility or the type of rental. Like you're gonna say, we know these are strictly events. So if you're talking about, it being a park or it being an actual facility, then categorize, if it's a square, if it's a park, if it's an actual facility or a building, then I think you can categorize it to that perspective. And then also put in there that if they are doing some type of neighborhood event, then they must have given a certain time frame of advance notice so that that community can properly prepare themselves for that event to happen. If you're going to do block parties, or if you're going to determine the size of it. But I think that allowing advance notice so that proper traffic control can be put in place, or routes can be put in place in neighborhood residents can have a forewarning of what's about to come, or even be able to voice whatever concerns they may have, but in advance notice that this is something that's going to take place in that area.
And I'm just gonna add to that, what she's probably, when you say advance notice, that she's mentioned, the application don't need to come in a week before your event.
Right.
Give us time to vet it, and like she said, give the
Mhm.
neighborhood time to be aware that it's coming, or put that back on the applicant. I need to have blah, 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 you know.
Yeah, I think, people have gotten into the place of seeing this happen where they're advertising for an event before they even have a permit. And,
Mhm.
one of the things that when I ran a building, if someone did that, tell them, that's on you, not on us, because we have a process. So yes, that's one of the things that everybody said we needed to have more notice, and people know ahead of time when they're planning something. Sometimes, yes, it may come up as an impromptu, if someone passes or something like that, but most of the time, the planning process should be 30 days at least. So we are looking at that.
Thank you.
Is there for neighborhood ones, specifically ones that will be on our property? But I do believe that ones that are specifically in the neighborhood should have some connection, or, I say approval, but some presenting to MPAs. Is that currently a thought, or?
Well, the thing is, okay, so if it's not, if someone has something on private property, most time, because of the volume of it, that's when it impacts us. If they don't ask for a street to be closed, then it's not like we're permitting them to do that event necessarily. So what I'm saying is someone could have a backyard barbecue without us having any involvement in it. But we can do, and I think, I'm not sure if there's any official notification in PAs, but we normally send something out. So we will make sure that there's notification, as soon as that permit is applied for. That way it will give that notice for, as Mayor Pro Tem is talking about, for the neighborhood to know.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the other concern is even if we take it to them, it's upon the kind of community at that point.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next update we have is an update from the Economic Development Department.
Good evening, Christopher Carey, Economic Development Manager, City of Brunswick. For you tonight, we do have a slight presentation on updates. Do have a few items before you. Should pop up here shortly. There we go. Next slide, please. There we go. All right, so for our updates, Mary Ross Park, do have small business support meetings, business interactions, marketing and proposals, and our large parcel projects. Next slide, please. All right, so for Mary Ross Waterfront Park, we are working with an architect on some proposals for wanted to get redesigned. We do have a possible future site walk next month. MLK, we have right of way platting in process, so we're looking at creating some more lots in that area. Currently looking at around 39 6,000 square foot lots, and that's currently going through some review with our engineering. So our goal to stay in line with our current master plan. just looking at where do we exactly want to start with that?
We don't have anything other than the architect that we talked with was looking at the amphitheater type build, and that's what they're kind of looking at, but we haven't engaged them yet. So, and there's a cost attached to that. So if we were to engage them, we probably would have to come back and ask for approval of that process. But it's mainly right now, looking at the amphitheater and whether it's I guess, a feasible build out for that particular area.
So essentially right next to Old Risley Administration Building. The block north of the
It's the
South
29.
29. Mhm.
Yeah, there's a railroad right away that the city got, and what we're looking at is maybe surveying it to see if it's land that we may be able to put some housing. Our housing program would be engaged in that process. So we're just trying to see, but we need to survey it because it's right by a drainage ditch to see the, I guess, usability of the property would be.
And Regina, I'm sorry, this is Mayor Pro Tem, and that's the area right over by Old Risley High.
Yes, ma'am.
Right behind it.
Yes.
Yeah, between Mercer Alabama and the old Risley, the 2900
Yeah,
block.
yeah. Yeah, I'm just making sure everybody knows the location.
Next slide, please. All right, so here we have our proposed incubator along Norwich Street. So we are looking at a few different properties. This project would be a combined effort between the city and Golden Isles Development Authority. So it would be something that we will be trying to engage in business development, small business development. Next slide, please. So a few properties that we did have on the map or were scouting for possible usage were the old transmission shop. Next slide, please.
Carrie, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. To that, where you have the transmission shop,
Mhm.
has anyone thought about, possibly asking the National Guard, that building
Mhm.
sits there in that whole big lot right there. It's not, it's not any activity to infantry, or asking maybe, I don't know if it's from the governor, whoever, to possibly, if they could move it out there in the county on the air road somewhere far off, instead of leaving it right here at the city, as that property can develop to something else more usable.
Yeah, that's something we can explore.
Okay.
Which building are you referring to? It's not used?
She's talking about the National Guard Armory.
Okay, so, I mean, that would be grand undertaking, so I would say, that may be some future consideration at this point, but I'd like to, get the collective commission that. I mean, I understand your concern about it, but, we have so many empty buildings. We have a lot of amount that we're working on, but we'll put it on the list and see, or just make the ask. Okay.
Mhm. Yes, ma'am.
And for that undertaking, I do believe it's that we could at least start the conversation with Congressman Carter as to what means federally to start that conversation. So
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. We also have the old bank, property 3301 and 3303 Norwich. That property is a double lot. So, the existing facility would be available as well as the second lot. So we'd have some additional opportunities there. Next slide, please. Next slide. And the old donut shop. So this property is currently quite derelict. So if we were able to use this, it would be a complete demolish and rebuild. There are some known challenges in the potential acquisition of this property. However, could be the cheapest of them all to initially get.
Do you have some thoughts of what could be utilized there? Or how would you utilize that space?
So this would be a full build out of a mixed use is not the correct term. It would be a mixed office commercial development area. So you potentially trade workers that would be there, people who were doing light manufacturing. So someone with multiple 3D printers trying to create a product for prototyping to manufacturing. So not quite large scale manufacturing, but small prototyping and things like that. People coming out of the Lucas Center trying to find space.
Yeah, let me just get some clarification to you and a good question. So all three of these spaces that you identified as potential for the business incubators, the goal would be that whether it's the city or another entity lease out smaller spaces for people to try startup businesses and then prove their concept and then be able to hopefully grow and then relocate in the city into a bigger space. Is that
Correct.
just okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we started this conversation, if you all can recall, we talked about grant funds and programs that we can help support small businesses. We went to the Entrepreneurial Academy and talked with them, and they said that instead of possibly, just giving out money, maybe we can provide space for people for up to a year at low cost, no cost, that kind of thing, which support the business startups. And so that's why we're looking at this. We are kind of still in conversation with the Development Authority and the Entrepreneurial Center. And just those buildings, we wanted to kind of see what cost of investing in this would be. And we were looking at existing buildings, see, what it may cost to put together a package. But that's basically why we were looking at the buildings. I asked Chris to kind of inventory the street and see what was all, available over there.
I know that the old donut shop, the land bank at one time was taking a look at that, Brian. And I know that there were some title challenges on that property, but I know at one point the land bank was looking at that old donut shop property. And as you're considering this area, this Norwood Street, the entire corridor was pretty much a small business corridor with a lot of mom and pops that got their feet wet and that did pretty well when I was coming up as a youngster. But as you're showing this and thinking about the needs of that area for revitalization, and then also considering the need that we have along that corridor and in this area, for all different types of businesses. This could be a multicultural corridor that entertains a gamut of different ethnicities or cultures, but also looking at that area, because pretty much that area is a food desert. And so if there could be the consideration of some type of um, grocery store. I know that there is the Latino area there, but also looking at a more extending that cultural diversity in that area and exploring other food opportunities as well, because that area is a food desert area. And so I think that would be something that would be good as well, because I know with the consideration that we gave for the not the enterprise zone, but the other incentive program that we did for the business that's going to be starting or doing the food truck um, business on that corner a little further down. And so this has been historically small businesses. And I think that even if there could be the addition of some other type of a grocery store or food outlet of some sort incorporated in this area. Brian, you remember what was going on with that donut shop? I know it was a title issue.
The deed, I believe it's Browning, current owner name on it.
I can barely hear you.
I'm sorry, I'm speaking. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, much better.
Okay. There are two remaining heirs to that property. One of the heirs signed a deed, a quitclaim deed to the land bank. So we actually own the land bank owns a half interest in that property. Unfortunately, although we've tried and John can attest, we have not been able to have the other meaning heir execute the same quitclaim deed to get full ownership interest into the land bank. I do think it's something Taylor Ritz is working on, though.
Okay.
Alrighty. Next slide, please. Right, so I have been also at a host of different meetings. So I do regularly attend the URA board, the Downtown Development Authority Board, Golden Island Development Authority, Land Bank, and a few other boards. So you stay busy with staying up to date on the boards, as well as different workforce engagement and engagement with our different entities locally. Next slide, please. Also do engage with businesses, notably the grand opening of Brown Butter Shop, as well as the new site over in the commercial track along I-95. So that's not in the county, but major project for our area. Next slide, please. So we do have some upcoming promotional considerations. So some of our past promotional material were held by Opportunity Brunswick, 365 Publishing, and Georgia Trend Magazine. Some current considerations are Global Site Location Industries, Ed Alliance, and 365 Publishing as well, and they are a local. And the next slide's information on Global Site Location. So something special about them is that they use AI-based tracking to search through companies who are looking to relocate. Next slide. So this is what their ACE looks like. They have a few different businesses. They'll show regions that those businesses are looking to move to, the footage of what they are looking to do, if they want to lease, if they want to purchase. It's just a tool that separates them from some others. Next slide, please. And these are some of their deliverables. from the material that they have provided. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. So that one,
I can't remember. We haven't engaged any of them at this point. We're still,
Yeah.
we're still looking at whether it'll be some, we're checking references and other, entities that may have used them to see what the actual impact is. So we haven't reached their process yet, but I think it was around $9,000.
some number around there.
Yeah.
Right, and then next we have FDI Alliance, which would be a magazine campaign. So this would fall something similar to what we have for Georgia Trend magazine. So this product would have a fall issue, full page advertisement on the inside back cover, two-page article, as well as digital and social media presence as well. It's just a cover, what they provide, and some of the items that I just covered. And then for our large projects, so just some updates on what these parcels are. So we do have the Oglethorpe block, which we are, UR is currently reading about. Pinova Hertz, which is still under scrapping and cleanup. Talked about the MLK project. Big lot corridor on Community in Altama. So that area needs some work. We're working on development discussions, Live Harbor and the Marside property for renewing leasing.
Back to your, you had a slide, had meetings on there. I can't remember, was that the Roosevelt Lawrence or Harris, the one, it said something about a meeting with county or something.
Yes, that was the Roosevelt Harris Senior Center.
And you did a tour of that, and then what county staff was there? Curious.
Yeah, so that was a joint effort for our
For-
emergency preparedness. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But were any of their commissioners there, or just one?
It was just staff.
Okay, all right.
I have a question. Of everything that you presented to us tonight, and all the parcels and all the different buildings, what are you going to target on to complete in the next 6 to 9 months?
The plating of MLK is something that's high on the list, so it will have to be the plating of MLK and getting a target property for the debater. So those would be the two highest priority items.
So you would narrow down the target property yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. And when do you plan to have a target property in the incubator to complete?
Target property should be sometime soon. So I would say in the next,
It's hard to say because we still are in, I guess, conversation about actually we need to provide in terms of space, parking, accessibility for whatever type of businesses that we are planning to support. So it's hard to say, which is our target now because we haven't even determined what we'll put in the building. I guess going forward, we probably will be meeting for the next 2 months to make some determinations on that. But after then, we may be able to give you an updated time.
And as you know, we losing Badcock on Orange Street. I'm pretty sure you're aware of that building.
yes, ma'am.
So,
Um,
thank you.
Regina, we had some prior plans, and I guess for me, my question initially is going to be, have those plans been reviewed? There were some plans put together when Dice was here and when Travis was here, those were some awesome things that were worked on up and down that Norwich corridor by SCAD, and some other efforts that were taken to review and look at feasibility and various opportunities that could be materialized up and down Norwich Street. Chris, have you um looked at or reviewed any of those plans? Because it was some good material in those plans, and some seed monies put towards looking at those things. That entire corridor and North Street is pretty much a Brownsfield area, because of the history of that corridor with car dealerships and gas stations and I think we may need to go back and look at the history of that corridor. I'm not saying put gas stations there now, but I'm looking at financing opportunities to support some of these things, and are putting in and doing grants for those brownfield areas. I attended a conference, the GEC conference, and was one of the panelists addressing the brownfields opportunities. And there is a lot of money that we are missing out in not exploring those brownfield grant opportunities. And so we need to take a look at those grant opportunities for that North Street corridor. And I have had conversations with Camilla with the EPA regarding this opportunity, and they're having John, I don't know if John's in the room, but there was a grant application started, never completed. And so Camilla asked me about that. Every time she and I speak, she talks to me about the monies that we are missing out and not addressing and exploring those brownfield grant opportunities. And that it's a lot of money in that Brownsville grant opportunity area. So I think we need to take a closer look at that. So Chris, I'm just kind of giving you that information for you to kind of start doing some homework on. But I know that Camilla is willing to pretty much take you by the hand and walk you through the process, and some of the other resources that are available because that is a Brownsfield area.
Mayor Pro Tem, we have looked at the Norwich Street corridor study, but some of those things that you mentioned, we'll try and research and dig a little deeper to find those. And certainly, yeah, I think that's a great suggestion and recommendation. Thank you for bringing that up, because we had not been looking in that direction recently. But I'll get with John and make sure we, kind of pull those and see what we can do to go after some of that money.
Yeah, Camilla is, I mean, she is ready. She tells me all the time, and she told me again earlier this month.
Please,
let
sir.
her, she will walk us through whatever needs to be done.
Okay, please send her contact information to me.
I will.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? The only one that I would have is I think the work that we're doing on parcels. I know URA is continuing to diligently on Oglethorpe. I do want us to have some folks not on the larger aspects of what Mary Ross could be, but even if it's changing the makeup of the footprint, if it's figuring out how we do water access, and phasing that project out in a way where people are starting to see shovels in the ground, that opens that up, opens the road up and opens that park up to more public access. But also, if we could find to ensure that we wrap in ways that we could expand businesses. I've seen a lot of pocket parks in the places that we've been. Some of them use old containers that they've turned into small businesses that could work inside of the middle park. But the more that we get great ideas moving in the right direction, the more see that actually coming to fruition. I would want to see that in the next quarter. The last thing, outside of the good work that you all have done, that a part of economic development is also workforce development. We have a ton of major entities coming to Brunswick, from Buc-ee's to Hyundai, the Hyundai plant being 45 minutes away. I would like to see our economic development department do a lot of work in terms of getting in touch with not only the housing authority, MPAs, and others to ensure that we are providing the training we can provide. We are pointing them into the direction of the resources that funnel into those jobs that are coming to our community. And that, Brunswick is, 14 some odd square miles. So in terms of landing a huge manufacturing facility, that's not going to happen for us. And so for us, what we can do is ensure that our citizens have, almost first right of refusal of those jobs come to our area. And our area, as I look at it, is a 60-mile radius of how we can get people to stops, but also get them to jobs that are viable for them and their families. So I think the more that we can focus some of our efforts on also training and getting our people ready for the job coming, I'd love to see just some work done on that.
Yes, sir.
With that, any other questions or comments? Hearing none. Thank you so much. Thank you for your work.
Thank
Yes, sir.
you.
Thank you.
We'll now
Thank
have
you.
an update on transit. Is that city manager? Oh, okay.
No, Mr. Mayor, that's me.
Gotcha. Director Hunter,
Can y'all-
thank you.
Can y'all hear me? Great. I'll share my screen real quickly. Appreciate the opportunity to give you all a little bit of an update tonight on our transit. The last, I think, discussion we had about that was when we were working with the county on the MOU that would allow us to operate our transit system on county roads. That was a final requirement from GDOT. Once we got past that hurdle, they finally, after 8 months, allowed us to release our RFP for our microtransit service provider. We posted that online on August 12th, sent it out directly to about a dozen providers that we had identified with our transit planning consultant, plus some others who had approached us over the years with some interest in microtransit. We held an online pre-proposal conference on September 5th. We had 7 companies that were represented at that pre-proposal conference. Last week, we got about a dozen questions in response to our RFP, which we sent out answers to and posted on our website. And finally, the closing date for when proposals are due for the transit service provider is October 8th. We anticipate after that holding interviews with top candidates. And once we have a top candidate identified, we will bring that back to the city commission for concurrence. We have in our schedule that would be at the November 20th meeting, but I'm going to push to try to make it at the first November meeting if we can. And we anticipate beginning the service in February, or the contractor commencing operations in February, so that the spring we will have our microtransit system on the ground and running. This has been a long time coming, as y'all know. There've been a huge number of steps along the way that have gotten us to this point. And I'm very happy that we're finally getting over this last phase to be able to actually bring a transit program to the city and our residents. That's just a quick summary of where we are. I really wanted y'all just to be aware that that RFP is out on the ground and that we have had some good response to it so far. And I'm happy to answer any other questions that you've got at this time.
I don't have a question, John. I think maybe, I'm just trying to make sure everyone can hear, because people that are in the room today or online might not have attended that first meeting when you broke the different types. So can you explain microtransit? Because some
Sure
people-
thing. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So the best way to describe microtransit is that basically it's similar to Uber in that we will have smaller vehicles, vans or small buses that's yet to be determined. That'll be up to the provider that will work within a service area in the first phase on the mainland. That basically you can use either an app or a phone reservation system that will provide nearby service. So they'll be able to pick you up. It may be, you may have to walk to the end of your block to get picked up. But then it would take you to points throughout the community. And it would be shared. So obviously if you're using a van or a small bus, there'll be other people on that route. But it's not really set routes. It's basically a ride share program throughout the community.
Thank you. Ms. McDuffie, I'm asking questions that some people may have. So for example, if I'm needing to utilize the service, will I need to have a debit card? Like how will I buy fare?
So that's something we'll work on with the providers. We will, it can be done entirely electronically. Or we'll have a way set up, likely at City Hall where you could come and purchase rides basically. So you'd have, we would issue some sort of a ride card that you would then use to purchase your rides.
So some type of kiosk, like maybe can we work or think about that at locations such as a Winn-Dixie or a Dollar General? I'm trying to make it easy for
potentially. I think that's something we're gonna have to work out with the provider.
Additional comments or questions?
I think that's a good, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mayor. But I think that's a good idea that Commissioner Rowe just addressed, and I know, John, you said that's something you have to work out with the provider. But I think that could also be a great booster economically for that that plaza out in that area, because now it's going to draw that traffic out to that area. So I remember Commissioner Rowe speaking to the redevelopment of that plaza and how that looks, and reimagining that space. And so now reimagining that space could incorporate that being a pickup point.
Yes, ma'am.
For transit.
Yes, and we'll have some other designated primary pickup points. Obviously, the college and the hospital are a couple of primary ones, but there'll be others, and that's part of what the algorithms and the background mechanics of what the service provider does is they help provide data that will help us identify what are primary destinations, and then we can start tailoring the system around those primary areas. So once we know exactly, we've got some idea of where they are, but once we have riders and we know where they're going, we'll be able to help target services to them, like potentially having a kiosk where they can, pay for fares in advance or things like that.
Awesome.
And I'm just asking these questions once again because it might be things that people are thinking.
Right.
So this will be throughout Glenn County, correct?
No.
It will not be the entirety of Glenn County. It will be in what's identified by, the Federal Transit Authority as the urbanized area. And that is basically, the city of Brunswick proper, out, 341 roughly to I-95, up to, Sam's out on the spur, and then basically over to the south side of Fletsey and over to 17 and back down to the city. So it's not the entirety of the county, but it is that what's considered the urbanized area.
John, how far south? I mean, I hear the north part, but how far will it go on the First Avenue? Is it First Avenue?
All of the city.
All of the
Yes.
city, all of the city. Yep.
And also there has been a change in the designation of St. Stephen's as an urbanized area too. So that may have a impact on the funding, which may give the county a little bit more incentive to be financially supportive of this
Correct.
project as well.
And that's,
So
that's-
we're going to look into that, to make sure that we can maximize that so that they can support it.
and that's why I asked those questions when I was thinking about the route, because I was thinking in form of location pickups, for example, exit 29, Winn-Dixie, out there, you said Fletsey, but the spur to that Winn-Dixie, and then there's a grocery store, I think, in England. Because, when you see on social media, it's not always people that live in the city that don't have transportation.
Right.
It's those people in District 1 and in District 3. So through all of this, hopefully, like you said, the county would want to buy in because their residents are affected as well. They
Right.
need to
And
get to work and to the doctor and to, other places.
And one of the things that's, we hope to have, this is going to be a very digital system. And in other places, you kind of GPS, it's almost like, I always think about it as like they put an electric fence around the area and you can change it. It's not like it's static of the area. We can look at, all the data to see where their peak places.
Right.
And there's going to be a lot of ability to modify the system, hopefully to accommodate, the areas that the need is greatest.
I am in favor, I know we've been working with the BATS committee to figure out how this works. You all have taken trips to Valdosta to see air transit system is working, and theirs is absolutely successful. And so having transit here in the city of Brunswick and in Glenn County is of paramount importance. And I do want to tack on comment one and then a question the other, tack on a comment to what Commissioner Roll was saying. Most of the seniors I think that we look at now are that go to Roosevelt Harris. Majority of those seniors are from the county. We have now, because of the sale of St. Mark's Towers, which again is an elderly population, because of that sale, they no longer have transportation. It was a transportation that was provided with a previous owner when it was under St. Mark's. Now that they've sold that property no longer has transportation. I say all of those things to say it is a wide array of people who we as a city have to start providing transit for. And I hope that we see this come online towards the front 2 quarters of next year. My question is around financial feasibility. You all may not have the answer to this right now, so I won't ask for a projection that rooted in fact. And so I would love to know on some pager or have those numbers sent over, what is the financial feasibility of our transit program if the county decides not to invest? At current, they don't plan on investing. We have pressed them. We have provided them all of the facts. We have told them where we believe people would come from, how it would affect college downtown, the island, and the like. But at current, they are at it still. So not necessarily the financial feasibility of getting it started, because I think Brunswick has seen transit come and then leave. And what we want to do is at least have some idea of what the financial feasibility of the city holding down transit and how long does that make sense and what does that do to our budgets over time. So I know that's some internal workings on the number. I know there are a lot of federal funds invested that are beyond matching. It's way above the amount that we would be putting. And I don't know how long those federal funds continue, whether they continue throughout the life of the program or what, but I would love just a financial feasibility study so we know that when we provide a service to our people that we won't be changing that 2 years later.
Okay, well, we'll look at it once we get the proposals and have some kind of, I guess, defined numbers and what that looks like going forward 3-5 years from now. Mhm.
And just as a quick question, how long has Valdosta's been up? Is it 3 years?
Actually, about 3 years, because I think when I first got here, they didn't have it. When we went to visit, they had just maybe 6 to 9 months prior to.
Okay.
So yeah, it's only been a few years and, you know, we get reports. I sent John an article the other day about a transit system that, you know, the same type that was working. I can't remember the city it was in, I think somewhere in North Carolina, but they had the same results, same report, had to expand the system, had great support from the city. And when I city, I mean the residents and people ridership. So, yeah, that it's, I think right now we're in a good place because there's been several communities that have had successful programs. And so, and as John said, we have a lot of vendors that showed interest. So we hope to get some really good proposal.
And I think, you know, shout out to Commissioner Roll, who's done a lot of work on the rezoning committee. A lot of the conversations that they're having from the school board is parents not being able to get to their children. If they're working over on Sea Island and their child is going to school at Goodyear, they may in the Sea Island transportation to get there, but something happens midday. How are they getting back and forth? So there's a lot of things that I want us to be moving on in the transit space. As soon as we can get those numbers, it helps us. So thank you guys for all the work, Director Hunter and City Manager. With that, we'll move on to consider for approval. Consider approval of September 4th, 2024 regular scheduled meeting minutes and September 9th, 2024 special called meeting. City Clerk Atkinson, no changes from you. Any changes from the DIs? Hearing none, we'll open it for a motion.
I move to consider approval of the September regular scheduled meeting minutes and the September 9th special called meeting.
Hearing the first, do I hear a second?
Second.
Hearing the first and the second, all those in favor show by the sign of aye. Aye. All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. We'll now on to number 7, consider approval of financial reports as of July 31st, 2020, City Manager McDuffie.
Thank you. And thank you all. I know I had to add that this was deferred to this meeting. This is, of course, for the July 31st, 2024, which is our first month of the fiscal year. So these numbers are very fresh, but there's a lot of adjustments that are made between the first and last month. So they are as reported as of the July 31st reports that were available. The revs for the month of July was $1.1 million. The expenses were $1.3 million for a monthly deficit and a year-to-date deficit of $108,000. Cash on hand, for as of the month was $8.1 million with $360,000 of, revenue or cash in the Prime South account and $7.8 million in the Georgia Fund One. The sales tax up for the month about 7%. So that was really good. The collections was $936,330 compared to $875,000 last year. So sales tax is still up, which we're very thankful for. Slide. So, yeah, this. There was very little activity in the Clause 6 for the year. For the month of July. And the cash on hand for that fund was at $196,112. The same thing for the SPLOST 22. Turn my screen. There was very little activity for SPLOST 22 as well. The total expenditures for the month through the month of July was $3.1 million. Only small expenditures in the storm drainage account for the month and for the trying to see which account it was that was small expenditure. It was in the storm drainage and in the building improvements. Okay, the Norwich, oh, hold on, I didn't do the, I'm sorry. The total distributions received through July was $9.1 million. Recorded $219,000 of interest through July for a total receipts of $9.3 million. Cash on hand as of July was $5.9 million. The Norwich Commons Fund, there was no activity other than interest income. That fund is cash of $370,254. Roosevelt Harris Fund, the budget for the fiscal year is $450,000. And the total expenses for the month were $21,715. Total revenue, $1,000. So there was a deficit for the month of $20,626. Cash balance for that fund was $11,650. The ARPA funds, there were very small, not a lot of changes in the ARPA. The interest income, of course, changed that. The interest income was $115,000, and that's since inception. That was not for the month. The ARPA fund had an expenditure in the, looking right now, homeless, we paid a portion of the homeless prevention in that, and we also paid some of the coastal community health service based on the agreement. Total expenses or disbursements were $4.961,000. Cash on hand in that fund was $5,486,000. The sanitation fund, of course, we haven't done the full billing for that, but we did receive revenues amount of $43,000 for the month of July, and total expense are $3,800 for an income of $39,663. Cash on for that fund is $589,788. The restriction for landfill only changed by the interest income. That balance was $207,396. Total waste disposal cost for July was $143,329. Storm water utility, of course, we haven't billed for that either. So the total inflow is $2,969 with a total outflow of $62,383 for a net balance of negative $59,414. Balance in that account was $82,224. In the Roosevelt Lawrence Center, total budget was $189,933. Expenditures for the month of July was $23,973. A lot of that was attributable to salaries for the summer programs, so that monthly expenditure should be reduced until next summer. Total balance or budget left is $165,939. I will answer any questions.
Under the, for the, allocations with the homeless prevention,
Mhm.
so far, we still have only given coastal community action 110,000.
According to what the report was as of July. There were some expenses paid. They may not have been recorded in July.
Okay.
Ms. McDuffie, looking at Splosh 6, because I'm having a hard time. Could you explain what transactions are pending to account the $3,591 difference? We have $196,112 on July 31st, but we have remainder balance on Splosh 6, $192,521.
It may be partially interest because, the balance for the budget include funds that are in the budget. Don't include the interest income, and that account does have interest income in it.
So and I'm gathering, it would be technically from May of 2017 to current, because you think that's about $1,000, $3,500 worth of interest?
No, it's basically just what's there. I'm pretty sure I'd have to go back and I asked Ms. Berry to do a reconciliation of the SPLOS 6. So give us a little time to go back and do a reconciliation of that full fund, because there is some changes in that fund, and I need to kind of look at them directly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's again, what I have reported here was kind of carried forward, and I haven't gone back to any of the things before then. The way that this information is generated is looking at a report that shows since inception. But what I've done since I took over the reporting is change the balances in the accounts that are still active. All of what happened prior to that was already in there. So, and I asked him to go in and look at SPLOS 6 because we want to make sure that everything was balanced. But a lot of times you won't have a clear balance between that cash on hand and what's been totally expended, because they're reported on different bases.
Okay. You still should have come with a reconciliated balance.
Well, and again, this has been a 6-year count. And again, I'm carrying forward. I haven't gone back and looked at all the journal entries, all of the things that impact those numbers. I'd rate a report from the system that says this is what being spent out of those accounts that's left. And I changed those balances for the projects that are still open.
Okay.
So I know exactly where that discrepancy may be, but we'll look at it and see.
Yeah, that's definitely needs to be cleaned up. I mean, because something that, like, even though it's behind, we now in 2024, that we should not continue to have that discrepancy.
Well, it's going to be different even going forward. I mean, the cash balance and the expended balance is probably never going to be reconciled because it's on an accrual basis. When we pay something, it may show in the cash or in the payment, but it may not show cash. So there's always going to be a difference. That's why it's reported on cash versus what's expended.
Okay, let me ask you this. Are there things that we have recently spent within those categories?
There's some, yes, I mean, I changed the balance.
Within, in Splash 6, we have utilized our funds within in those categories in Splash?
In
out of
the
Splash?
ones that are open, as a matter of fact, the only one we are really left to spend money in, because we're trying to reconcile it. When I talked to Garrow, he was still sending invoices for Floss 6 for drainage, and he had a different balance what Kathy had. So I told him not to send any more invoices because we needed to reconcile his balance to finances. Because he was kind of spending money based on what his balance was, and it's not the same. So in order not to overspend that account, we pretty much suspended any spending in there and just said spend whatever, storm drainage money out of the new splosh.
Okay. Now, when you're looking at Splash 22, and I'm assuming that this interest earned started since May of 2023, and it's to now, because all right. When you look at the two balance, the difference between, you got the total receipts since inception, $9.3 million, and you have cash, and I guess that's the same explanation you're going to use, your cash balance on hand, which you have a difference of $3.47 million. And then when you take that amount, take the difference where it says city expended, that column, which is 3.4 million, and you take that difference, there's a $25,541 difference. Is why is that difference there?
It probably, well, it could be numerous reasons. Journal entries that may have been posted that had not been posted out of cash yet. It could be interest income that's in transition. Again, what I look at to prepare these reports, and this is how, again, it's done. It's not going to reconcile because there's differences in what's accounted in. So that's the reason the cash is reported as cash, because it tells you what's in the bank. And that's as of 31st. So, August 1st, that even changes because it's on a daily basis of what's in the bank. Necessarily what's been spent, what checks have come in, what's been accrued. There's a lot of different things that, impact those numbers.
So we may have open POs for the entire amount of a contract and not maybe only paid the installment of that.
Well,
Is that what
it wouldn't be an open PO because you don't post POs on the accounts. They post payments that made or payments that are pending.
So my next question, I would like for us to really get that cleaned up.
It's not necessarily, it's not a cleanup. And I'm sorry, it's not a cleanup. If you're going to report the cash, then you report what's in the bank. If you're going to report what's been expended, then you report what's been posted to be expended out of an account.
Okay, so basically the posting is behind. That's what it comes down to.
I'm not sure if it's behind because the posting could be done throughout the month, but the money may not be expended or it may be expended. The cash shows what's in the bank.
Right, I got that. Cash is what's in the bank, but if you have spent or
sign a check, send it out. That's the only thing that's be the difference here. And last, it's a 25,000, so if there's a $25,000 nation of things that we have spent out that has not cleared, that's what, we need to know, explain that difference. Why have the outstanding balance? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Why is it should be close, 25. It's not like, well, the first one is 3,500, but it's not, I need to know. I just need to know, why do we have a large difference from the cash on hand versus to, what, because right here, when you're looking at what it's expend, we claim we spend 3.44 million, but technically there's a 3.44 million, but there's a 3.7 million difference. I just need to know. I just need to know. Maybe we'll spend another time, you explain
I think
what,
so.
what makes up that $25,000 difference? What makes up that $3,500 difference? I need to know more specific than just, oh, I told you what the cash in the bank, but we don't really have an actual idea if this money or projects or whatever is clear or exactly. I just don't, I don't like the estimation.
Well,
you
it's
know?
not an estimation. When I pull a report, and maybe I could just show you the reports that are pulled,
Mhm.
basically, and that would help you understand. This is reporting on the reports. I don't go and, find a number. I pull a certain report as of the month of July, basically report what's been expended according to the information that's in the computer. Now, again, that's what I can't really tell you, is what's information's in the computer versus what's not. You'd have to look at every journal entry and see what's there and what's not.
Exactly. So you just, the journal entries. So basically, how far behind are the journal entries?
It's that they're behind. It's not, they're never going to catch with the cash, probably. I would very much be surprised if any time the journal entries, the entries on the books would catch up with cash. It's just not in accounting. And maybe you probably need an accountant to explain it better. And I'll ask Mr. Perry if he can, provide some clarity on it. But it's an accounting difference between cash, and that's in that it's reported in the manner that it is because the cash is always somewhat different than what the actual expenditures show.
So
And
you,
the
you
reason
are,
that's asked,
I'm sorry,
what is
Regina.
the cash that we have in the bank?
And I think this is probably a larger conversation that's gonna have to be reconciled. So we're moving in two different accounting methods. The cash on one hand and then an accrual on the other hand.
Yes, and that's why it says cash balance and cash on hand, because yes, the other is accrued and, has other entries.
And I guess that's the same for the ARPA funds too as well,
For all of them.
for all of them. Okay.
And I think, Commissioner Atkinson Williams, I think these are valid questions. If anyone looked at the budget, they may have these same questions as well. So, any work that we can do with Mr. Perry just to understand the accounting practices and how things work overarchingly. I know Mayor Pro Tem has a far greater understanding of that coming from the IRS and understand both sides of it, but we could maybe set a meeting with Mr. Perry and walk through that.
Okay, and actually I have asked him to look at our financial reporting and see if he could provide better clarity, because I don't like the
The
format,
ways.
it does need some cleaning up. So I have asked him to kind of go through information and see if it can provide better clarity on the numbers that are being reported.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Question.
Yeah, and
And I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lance.
go ahead,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
You go ahead. I did already say something, so I'll wait till you get through.
Thank you. I would just ask to, and forgive me of my ignorance, is I would love to see like I'm sure we're probably going through the final checklist for closing out last fiscal year. I would love to see a little list or a reconciliation of this is what we budgeted for last fiscal year. This is what we ended up with. You know, where we had obviously we had a little bit of a surplus. How does that all look? How are we tracking? You know, once we wrapped up all the budget, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
that
So
kind of comes with the audit process because the auditors, not only do we do year-end journal entries, and it's, normally not a lot of entries that have to be made.
Right.
And then the auditor comes in and they make additional entries
Right.
and changes. So
adjustments.
usually, and then what we have to do before the audit is finished is clear up the variances that are in the budget. So yeah, we can try and provide, once that's done, report.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments?
No,
Sounds like
I'm
Mr.
just,
Perry's got-
I'm confident
there.
that, I'm sorry, I'm confident that, Mr. Perry, as he gets his, feet wet, he'll reconcile, these matters according to the system that he uses or that he works off of. Um, I do think that these things can be brought into perspective and with the concerns that have been raised, which are good concerns. So those things can be marked according to what Commissioner Atkinson Williams has addressed, as well as what Commissioner Saby has also voiced concerns about. So I think it's just kind of meshing the two accounting methods that sometimes enter or commingle with one another in the governmental record keeping. So I'm sure that this can be resolved.
Yeah, thank you for your leadership as well in the financial matters, Mayor Pro Tem. We'll now move to number 8, consider approval of resolution for the Georgia Department of Transportation / Federal Transit. Oh, I apologize. We'll open it for a motion to approve the financial reports.
I make a motion that we approve the financial reports as of 31st as presented by staff.
Hearing the first, do I hear a second?
Second.
Hearing the first and the second, all in favor, show by the sign of aye. Aye. All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. We'll now move on to, thank you for that. We'll now move on to number 8, consider a resolution for the Georgia Department of Transportation Federal Transit Administration 5307 FY26 Transit Funding Application. Director Hunter.
Thank you, Mayor. We, as part of our transit
Director Hunter
operations.
on? Okay.
Yeah. Can y'all hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yep, we got you.
Okay. As part of our operations for the transit program, we apply annually for funding via GDOT that comes through the Federal Transit Administration's 5307 Small Urban Transit Program. The city of Brunswick, as Ms. McDuffie mentioned earlier, this past year with the changes in data from the census, the FTA actually recognizes a larger area that's now called the Brunswick St. Simons urbanized area, which increases the amount of available funds that we can tap into for transit. That's a little over $1.2 million for FY26. I've been working for the last few weeks on the application for that funding. As part of that, we are required to approve the resolution that's attached, which basically empowers me to fill out the application and submit it on behalf of the city. I know that sounds like a whole lot of fun. And Mr. Mayor, I think you will appreciate this. It's 37 different documents that require multiple signatures. And if y'all allow me to fill all that out, the mayor does not have to sign his name all of those times. Um, But this year, we will be filing something of a placeholder application based on our estimates from our transit consultant. I have spoken with GDOT, and even though our RFP will come in a couple of weeks after the September 30th deadline, they will basically hold our application open. And after we have our service provider on board, we will work with them to develop a final budget, submit that to GDOT, and be able to bring back to you what that final number will be in terms of what our matching requirements will be, and how much of that $1.2 million we will be asking to draw down.
Thank you for that, Director Hunter. Any questions or comments from the commission? Hearing none, I'll open it for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the resolution to apply for the GDOT FTA 5307 transit application.
Hearing the first, do I hear a second?
Second.
Hearing the first and a second, all in favor, show by the sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. Anything for executive session, city attorney or city manager? Nothing for executive session. We'll open it for a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Hearing the first, do I hear a second?
Second.
Hearing the first and the second, those in favor, show by the sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. We are.
Good night, y'all. Have a good evening.